Good evening. This is Assemblywoman Petrie-Norris. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our virtual workshop on appointments to state boards and commissions. I myself was just sworn into my second term in office last week, and it really is such an honor and a privilege to be able to serve our community. And one of the things that's so special about this community is the many ways in which people want to serve, particularly right now in the midst of this moment of unprecedented crisis. People really have stepped up and stepped in, and I'm always getting asked, what can I do to help? So excited to be able to talk with you today about how you can apply to serve on a state board and commission. And we are joined today by the Governor's Appointment Secretary, Catherine Rivera. Appointment Secretary Rivera, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me in this great format, and congratulations, of course, on your election. But I'm just so happy to be here.
Well, thank you. As I think I mentioned to you before we went live, we were able to do a workshop like this back when I first took office, I think in 2019, and we had almost 200 folks from the community who came and participated in our in-person workshop. So I know that for folks listening at home, they're excited to hear from you and excited to learn how they can get involved. So to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about your role? What do you do as the appointment secretary for the governor?
Sure. I think also, just coming into this job, I've now for about a year and a half, I was appointed myself 5 times. So I brought a really, I think, unique perspective because every single time was different. I took all of the good from those times and really sort of also looked at other ways that we could improve. But I think for both myself and for my team, I've always just tried to instill in them what it feels like to be on the other side of this process. The governor is responsible for 3,000 appointments throughout the state. That includes 300 boards and commissions. And we have people constantly, as you can imagine, not simply with COVID and everything else that everybody's dealing with. There's been a lot of change. We also have a change in federal administration, which is bringing some challenges, good challenges, but we are constantly recruiting and trying to find people who really want to be a part of the administration and serve on our boards and commissions. I will say that it is not as glamorous as it sounds. I always try to remind people, you can give me the fancy title, but the reality is we are an employment agency, a very large one. And so with those types of numbers to fill, we really do have to use our online application system. And so for us, that is our first point of contact. I think people always think they have to know someone. Not true. And if you do, that's great. But if you don't, we really use our online application system. And so that really should be sort of the first point of contact for folks. And it is my responsibility and our team's responsibility, to sort of use that system to reach out, to do events like this. We can all of the deputies are listed on the gov.ca.gov website. And they also have their portfolios, so people can easily find out if they have an interest, who is responsible. And I just always encourage people to do that, because for us, this is our job. This is what we do. We enjoy it. And we do look forward to talking to individuals and answering their questions and hopefully encouraging them to participate in the appointments process.
So you said the governor appoints something like 3,000 positions. Can you give us just a flavor for kind of the range and breadth of those appointments? What types of things are?
Yeah, sure. So we have hundreds of board and commission appointments, and we have, for example, a lot of licensing boards. If there is a profession, there is likely a board for it. If you have an interest in something, there is likely a board for it. I mean, it's really important because we are, sort of dealing with all of the different professions out in the state. And many of those slots are professional slots where you have to be a licensee. But on all of our boards, we have what we call public slots. And that is really the slot that is not in that profession. They are not supposed to be in that profession. Those are what we try to call them is, those are the people of California. Those are holding, the boards accountable, being that voice. It also tends to be a person that we tend to talk with a little more as the eyes and ears, you would say, for the administration, to kind of let us know what's going on. We obviously have, if you ask people, for their top sort of boards, we of course have, everybody wants to be either a film commissioner or a UC regent. So as you can imagine, anything in education, anything that is that sort of high profile, transportation commission, absolutely apply for it. But we always try to let people know there are obviously very, very, very competitive boards. And I love the fact that so many people obviously have a vested interest in contributing to the education levels, at every level. So we still need people to apply, but again, we have a little more competitiveness that goes on with those. And then of course, we have the administration, the people that we need to come in and actually work as part of the governor's team. We are losing people, and I say this very publicly because it's true, probably at least 2 people every week. We lose appointees. People are retiring, people are deciding to move to other places, just career changes, just life when you're dealing with that large of an administration. So we are always looking to bring people in. And what I have started to do is we will be posting on the website at the appointments tab a list of our priority administration appointments. So whether it's communications, legislation, marketing, external affairs, general counsels, we will begin posting those on our website, likely at the beginning of the year. But aside from the administration, we do have always our vacancies on our boards and commissions, and that has always been there. It's a little easier to track because they're terms, and so we're constantly seeing a rotating term. But even if somebody goes on there and they don't see a vacancy, there will be at some point a vacancy, and we obviously start these processes, months in advance. And so if there's something you're really committed to and have an interest in, and it doesn't say that there is a vacancy there, apply anyway. Email the deputy, reach out, and that way you can move sort of forward in the process at an earlier point, which is very helpful to us as well.
Got it. And what I heard you say is there's just such a diverse range of appointments, and there's such a huge diversity of these boards and commissions that almost have any interest and any experience. I think you said if you've got a profession, we've got a board. If you've got an interest, we've got a board. So there really is a potential fit for almost anyone. So let's talk a little bit about the appointments process itself. So can anyone apply? And do you need any specific experience in order to apply?
There are very few limitations. And part of that, and, not having done this for any other governor, really is driven by this governor. He is really pushed us. We talk about diversity, and it's in the traditional sense, whether it's ethnic diversity, gender diversity. But where he has really focused, in addition to those, is geographical diversity. We have many areas that are underrepresented. Also, we are always, looking at diversity of what I call diversity of experience. And for us, it's very important that, we understand what is driving somebody to serve. And so for us, it's, I tell people all the time, my stories that, I was born to parents who were 20 years old and they had been farm workers, kind of made their way slowly while raising me. Went to school and clothes my mother made for me in first grade. And it's reminders like that for me about what the families and the people in California are going through, and especially more so now than ever. And so for us, we're constantly looking for a diversity of experience. Like, what is it that has, brought you here to want to serve? And that is really what we talk about with the governor as well. By the time we get in there, he knows we've gone through, checked all the boxes, and, the person's great. But we really talk about just that, sort of diversity of experience and what that person can bring, to the administration. And so when we are, when you're sort of going through and looking at what you want to do, you can choose on the website, when you go to the application, you can choose what it is that you're interested in. what I tell people is that you don't have to pick one thing or even, two things. We know that most of us has varied interests, as you mentioned. We have our professional side. We might also be, a Girl Scout troop leader. We might also really love to go, run. We might love rocks. And that's why when I talk about the diversity of experiences, if there's anything where you have that connection, choose that one. We've got geology, we've got, sports, we've got everything. So, we don't mind when somebody goes into the system and checks, it's kind of a myriad of choices, because we really understand that that's probably coming somewhere from what their experience has been. And then through that process, we begin to pull. And like I said, with our boards and commissions, if somebody is rotating off, we won't go in and say, let's pull every application that has applied for this. We will be looking, for example, do we need somebody from a certain region? Are we lacking that representation? Or was that person maybe a communications or a marketing or a external affairs person that we need to then replace? And then, we might be looking for some other factor. It's like the unicorns. We go unicorn hunting for everything. And so we kind of narrow those searches. So if you're not hearing from us, always feel free to reach out, because often we will explain, like, this round, this is what we're going to be looking for. Next round, this is what we're going to be looking for. And you might be in that group of individuals that we would normally pull, but if you're not, we can also say, but we could use somebody, because when we go in and we look for the unicorn, the other thing that we will often do is we will get people who didn't apply for that board or commission. And we'll call you and say, I know you didn't apply for this, but would you be interested in this? We make cold calls, and people tell us no every day, all day. It's okay. And if you tell us no, we'll be back. We don't say, oh, they didn't want to serve, so let's, we're not going to talk to them anymore. We will definitely come back and circle back around. But we really do pull for qualities, and then we take those individuals, we start reaching out, we narrow that process down. That really in the process, you're probably going to be participating in at least 3 interviews. There's usually a department level interview, there's an agency level interview, and then there's a governor's office interview. Every single person gets interviewed by the governor's office. Depending on what the role is, it may be a ledge representative and an appointments representative, or a policy representative, or a legal representative. The appointments unit are in all of the meetings. And then really the last part of the process is, for us, it's the paperwork. It's saying, okay, this is going to be a good fit. I take those appointments into the chief of staff, and then I take them into the governor. And I meet with them every week. So just to give you an idea of when I talk about the numbers, I meet with them every week, sometimes for a half hour, sometimes for an hour. It has at times been an hour and a half or 2 hours, just depending on what's on our plate at the time. And we are usually taking in between 20 and 30 individuals, just paperwork, just actual individuals appointments every week, on top of spending the rest of the time talking about what do we need next? Where are we headed next? What are our needs next? And then at that point, the press release that everybody gets to see goes out, and then really the work begins. And that's kind of when the hard part is the exciting part too, though.
And so, can you share some recent examples, so to help make it real for folks? So you mentioned you're meeting with the governor once a week. Even you yourself have served on 5 boards. What's the governor looking for? And I don't know if you can kind of anonymize a story about a recent appointment, and help make it real for folks.
Yeah, and it's every single appointment is different, which is interesting, and that's probably why this job does not get boring for us. It really is just every process is a little bit different, but also, my team will say, and I'll say, okay, so horse racing board, I need you to go find me an attorney. It should be a person that has a diverse background. If they have some, worked in the Central Valley, that would actually be helpful too. And my team's looking at me like I'm crazy. But that's exactly what they did. It took a little bit more time, but we were looking, because every board is a puzzle. We are trying to fit different pieces. We do not want there to be groupthink, right? We're not there to necessarily say everybody has to think exactly the same. We want to just bring together a group that's going to be able to work together bring diverse voices, and hopefully make better decisions because of that. So we ended up making the appointment to the horse racing board of the first African-American woman to ever sit on that board, who was an attorney. And times like that where you kind of can look back and see all the change on one board that has happened, are really fulfilling. And then it's like, okay, we're done with that one, and then we're on to the next one. I think another example might be, it might be a little surprising to people, but with the governor has CSU appointees, trustees. He had 3 that we were looking for. They are very competitive, lots of applications. What was very clear to the governor was that there was a real lack of representation from the Central Valley and the Inland Empire. And so he wanted more candidates from those areas. We ended up doing over 30 appointments. And that's unusual, I will say, to do 10 people. The more people you talk to, the more people you disappoint. But at the same time, the more opportunity there is. And I just try to respect people through that process. And we always let them know so that nobody is surprised. But we ended up being able, to put fantastic individuals, one from the Inland Empire, an attorney who had written extensively on race and inequities in relationships, and then a gentleman that had been working in the Central Valley on K through 12 for years. And again, both demonstrated experience is what we were searching for. So it really is. The other thing I will just add is just about timing, and because people will often ask, well, about how long does it take? And if I could answer that question, I would make my job so much easier. And the reason why is because we are often, when we're putting together the puzzle, for example, when I left the Agricultural Labor Relations Board, my colleague had also left to go to the PUC. And so they were all new, and we were going to either reappoint or appoint. I found the first individual, the first woman that I put on there. And from that point, it was probably 6 months before I had the 5th person ready to go. And so for her, it was forever. And she just would check in. I was like, we're working on it. We're working on it. Yeah. For the last person, it was probably a month. And so sometimes you will see that where, because of what we're trying to accomplish, it will take a little bit longer for one person, a little bit shorter for another person. But like I said, our main priority is just that everybody kind of knows why that is happening. I don't like the idea of appointments being looked at as like a black hole where, it's like you have a screen and you don't really know what's going on behind it. It's okay. And I told the governor this too. It's okay that people know we're not necessarily a well-oiled machine, but we get what needs to get done, and we get it accomplished, and we try to do it in the most respectful manner and with the best sort of outcome overall. But in order to do that, and when you have as many as you have, my deputies are probably working on, at any given time, 80 people at any given time. So, it's kind of like I try to cut them slack. But at the same time, so things will happen, and priorities shift, right? If somebody retires that we weren't expecting, all of a sudden, on a board where you need a quorum, or they're making decisions around health issues, that deputy's priorities are, she's going to drop whatever she's doing and go over and try to put out that fire. So we just always tell people, just try to be patient, but we will always be communicating with individuals. So although every process is different, every board appointment is different, we just hope that we can make sure that people know where they are standing in that process.
And how long are the appointments for? And I know that probably differs depending on the board that we're talking about.
Yeah, so most board or commission appointments have terms. There are some where you sit, and you can sit at what they call at pleasure, and so you sit for until they decide not to serve anymore, or we decide to maybe put somebody new in there. But most boards have terms, and again, those vary. They could be 3-year terms, but you can also, very often with the licensing board, it might be a 2 to 4-year term, but you can actually be reappointed to 2 terms. And then you cannot be reappointed again, which is why people are constantly terming off, because they cannot be reappointed. The board that I was on were for 5-year terms. And so it just depends on the board, and then you go into your term. The other thing that I will point out is, and you I'm sure know about this, but Senate confirmation. Pretty much all of our appointments are subject to Senate confirmation, which sounds like very scary for those that don't sort of live in that world. But again, it is just simply the Senate interviewing, going through their process, taking a vote, and then confirming the appointment that the governor has made. We have a person that is dedicated to walking people through that process, and helping them and working with them, because you will get questions and all of that.
Well, and unlike what I think we often think about at the federal level, these appointments have not been kind of controversial or politicized here in California. I think,
yeah,
by either party. Is that correct?
yeah, right. Yeah, no, I mean, and even I have found it to be a very, again, it feels a little bit stressful, because you're going to be subject to questions, but there's so much preparation, and the Senate Rules Committee members, made up of both parties, are there to try to help. I mean, they're not there to sort of make this torturous, or to try to surprise you or catch you or gotcha, or or any of that. They are all very committed to just doing, following their process, making sure they ask the questions that are of concern to the Senate. And really, I have always found it to be actually a almost pleasant experience to go through that, and to be able to kind of share my viewpoints with that. So, and again, we do provide support every step of the way.
Well, and okay, so just kind of recapping what the process looks like, and then I've got a couple of other questions on that. So it sounds like there's no specific time when appointments take place. It's ongoing, and there's not even really a specific time that folks should apply. So if people go and they look at a board or commission or position that they're interested in, and there's not a vacancy, they can still submit an application so that they are in the pipeline should a vacancy emerge. And in terms of what folks can expect as part of the vetting process, you said that there's 3 kind of rounds of interviews plus a Senate confirmation. And do they need specific references? What does that vetting process kind of look or feel like for a candidate?
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because the application itself asks some really detailed and really sensitive questions. It's not incredibly long, but it does take some time, but it does ask a lot about background and, just any information from your past. And what I always try to tell people is, there's really nothing that will is a barrier. We don't have any hard, if you did this, then you can't be appointed, or, any of those types of things. And in fact, because of the diversity of experiences that I've talked about, I've never met a governor more here for a comeback story. So if, we have appointed individuals who have served time, made poor choices when they were younger, came out, did some incredible things, went to put themselves through school. Some of them went to law school. Some of them, began as, one woman was an executive director for an organization that helped, battered women, of which she was one. So what I told is, and I think people are surprised, like, it's okay. Even if you've served time or anything, we are looking at, or bankruptcies, or, just anything that you could think of. Our view is and how did that change you? What did you do as a result of that? How is that led in any way to sort of what you're trying to do now? I think this governor looks like, if you haven't made a mistake, you probably haven't contributed. You probably haven't been risking and getting out there and doing enough things. And, so, I just always tell people to just simply be honest, because I think that is the only thing actually that, is difficult to kind of work through. Everything else, we are here for the conversation and like to have that. And again, our deputies can reach out. And they are confidential, our applications. We don't share them with anybody, not even with the outside of the appointments unit. They are only seen by my staff. So there is that part of it in the vetting process, and that we look into, and we will run your background and do all of that. But if you've told us everything, up front, it really shouldn't be it shouldn't be an obstacle. And also, the other thing I wanted to make sure to say, that when you were asking about sort of the qualifications, is that the other change that this governor made when he signed legislation was you can also be undocumented, which is a question I often get as well. We have undocumented individuals serving throughout the administration in all areas, including the governor's office. So that's another sort of, I think, question that sometimes people, because the application will ask if you are a citizen. I just always like to make clear to folks that that also is not an obstacle.
Got it. Got it. And for most of these, and again, there's such a diversity of boards, but what is a typical time commitment that folks would be signing up for?
So what I tell people is, if you have an idea of what board or commission or that you would like to join, I would Google it, because they are all so different, and there's not really, and especially because a lot of it will depend on what's going on in that one, sort of in this time, in this moment. Clearly some boards are going to be busier than others, but when you Google it, not only how long they are meeting for, but it'll tell you how often they are meeting for. You can look at the minutes and see, oh my gosh, they're having 2 hours of public comment. What's going on here? It just gives you such a broad insight into the board. You could also see who else is on the board, which is always also helpful as well. And so because every single board is different, again, I wish there was more consistency. There just isn't in this business. I really encourage people to sort of Google it, because it really will tell you, because as you can imagine, there are some boards who meet maybe a couple of hours every month. Some might meet for 2 days, every other month or quarterly. And I don't know what's going to happen post Zoom and post COVID, whether we will go back to, sort of meeting. Some boards also meet, like in different cities. Some of them always meet in Sacramento. So I don't know how much that will change, but you can also be able to see that. And again, it will also tell you how controversial a board is. There was a time when I didn't even know there was a horse racing board 20 years ago when I was in the Davis administration. Of course, when I came into this one, it was all I heard about. So, it can definitely change for boards and commissions as far as, what's going on in the moment. And Googling it will really give you a good idea of what kind of time commitment that you would be looking at.
Okay, got it. And for most of them, there is some element, as you said, once we exit this COVID era, there is some kind of mandatory travel within the state. And are most of the boards, is there financial compensation for the roles?
Yes. So all of the boards have some sort of per diem. And it just depends. That'll also tell you the complexity and the time. And so it could be $50, it could be $400. And so, and that is merely to compensate for the time, essentially, that it takes to do that job. So even now, for example, when people are serving on boards, they are still getting the per diem because they are still doing the work. Separate from that, you would be reimbursed for travel. So if we do get to a point, or if travel becomes required as part of your service on the board, in some other capacity other than a meeting, you would be reimbursed for that as well.
Okay, and I think there's very few boards though where it's actually a full-time job, correct? It's really just a handful of appointments that would be a full-time thing. This is mostly.
I want to say there's about 16 that are either full or part-time.
Okay. Boards. Okay. And so tell us, what you said you had been appointed to 5 boards before you took this role. What boards did you serve on?
It was actually one board, but I was appointed 5 times, and that was
got it.
Yeah, it was all to the Agricultural Labor Relations Board, which is where I went after the Davis administration. And part of that is because of terms. And as I was saying, so when I was appointed to a term, but this is going to get too technical, but essentially there were only several months left on that term.
Right.
So
right.
If you get appointed to something like that, then you have to be reappointed to that. But I was appointed by Davis, Schwarzenegger, Brown. Yeah. as well as, of course, to this, my new stuff.
And so where can people find more information? What's the best kind of one-stop shop for an overview on the different boards, commissions, and opportunities?
Yeah, the best place really is at the governor's website, the gov.ca.gov. There is an appointments tab, and there is not only the online application process, but there is the listing of every vacant board and commission position, which is updated every month, as well as a list of the deputies and the boards and commissions, as well as agencies and departments that they service. And then fingers crossed, there will be a list of also just all of the priority administration appointments that we are looking for. If you would like to be our Department of General Services or Employment Development Department Director, please reach out.
Excellent.
I take every opportunity I can get.
Right, to plug those openings.
They're big jobs.
Well, Appointment Secretary Rivera, thanks so much for joining us. Is there, any final thoughts or points we haven't covered that you'd like the folks at home to know?
No, and I'm sure that others, that watch this may have other questions. And I really encourage people to really reach out. We want to be the arms open appointments office, because without resources, without people coming in, we don't get our job done. So we definitely are always, our doors are always open. So please, if there's any follow-up or you receive any in your district or anywhere, feel free to reach out, and then hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime in person.
Yes, that definitely sounds like a plan. And I appreciate you just emphasizing that open door policy, because I do think that sometimes people assume, like you said at the beginning, people assume, oh, you got to know somebody or get a referral. And actually, I think particularly with this administration and this governor, there is a real desire to cast a very broad net and actually, bring folks into the fold who perhaps haven't participated or haven't thought of participating before. So, and I think the other thing I do want to make sure that folks watching at home know is that in addition to the appointments that the governor does, there's also appointments that are done by the Speaker of the California State Assembly and by the President pro tempore of the California State Senate. So there's many opportunities to get engaged, many opportunities to get involved, and many opportunities to serve. So thank you again, Secretary Rivera, for your service. And to everyone watching at home, thank you. Stay safe and stay strong. Look forward to seeing you next time.